offshore racing, one of the hurdles you have to jump over is how you manage the fear.
We knew it was dangerous. As a matter of fact, there were a couple of years where I raced, the sport was the most dangerous sport in the world because so many people got killed.
Offshore powerboat racing, one of the world's most dangerous sports. There is a 1% chance you will be killed, and no compromise. It is also a highly expensive type of danger. A Class 1 boat owner can expect to spend around £2 million a season. And with little or no prize money, it is a sport only a few can afford. The beginning of the race season, 1998, the current American and world champion is Matt Alcone, a hugely successful Californian marketing man, and with more than enough confidence to match his bulging bank balance, being a winner is his natural way of life. But this year, there's a new challenger, Drambuie. First year, new driver and crew. The 45-foot skater catamaran is identical to Alcone's boat, but the man who drives it is a different character altogether. Forrest Barber is also immensely wealthy. The quiet elegance of his ranch in Texas shows that his personality is one not usually found in world-class motorsports. Success in business has given him everything he could possibly want.
I feel very fortunate. I think a lot of good things have come my way, either by hard work or by happenstance, but I certainly am a very fortunate guy. I think fortunate's the right word.
But one man stands in the way of the Powerboat World Championship title.
I feel damn lucky. You know, I just called my wife this morning as I was in my car and we're driving up the beautiful boulevards of Palm Beach and seeing the beautiful homes and the palm trees, and I'm on the way to getting what I think is the best powerboat in the world. I called her and said, you know, I'm one lucky guy, and thanks for letting me do this. This is a lot of fun.
I've never seen myself as anybody but just another guy who works for a living, and I worked hard all the time I was in business, and we were fortunate enough for the business to grow. We had a wonderful product and an extraordinary team of people that were building the product.
An unusually old-fashioned sense of fair play runs through his whole life, particularly where his family is concerned.
Well, Catherine is she's a real sport, and my wife Catherine is a delightful person and a person who goes after all kinds of challenges in her life, and she understands my need to both challenge myself and to thrill myself, and that she does competitive eventing, cross-country riding on horses. So she understands what I do. I think we all recognize that there's a price to be paid for being away from the family, and that's probably the hardest thing for me.
How much, realistically, would a season's racing cost you, including maybe buying a boat?
Well, you know, it makes me sweat every time I think about it, but yeah, I think you're probably, you know, around $1 million a year to do it right if you're buying a boat during that year. You have to like it a lot, especially to compete at this level. We're competing against guys who all could spend whatever it takes to win, and they do. When you look at it in cold, hard terms, there's no way to justify it, I think. It has to be, you just have to be willing to pay the price, whether it makes real sense or not.
There will always be those who despise you because of your success and your wealth. What would you say to them?
Actually, it hurts to think about people despising me or disliking me. I've always done my best to try to come across as just a normal guy who's been very lucky. And I love people, and sorry for them if they don't like me. You know, it's a dangerous sport. I want to see my children grow up, and I take such delight in them. That worries me, and it worries me. I hate to think of them without a parent. I have 3 children, and all of them are very special in their own way. My 2 young children, Alexandra and Mary, are 2 and 3, and they're extraordinary. And I just love them. It's hard to describe, but.
But in the cut and thrust of Class 1 powerboating, Barber's new vessel must prove itself in 8 nationals before going for the ultimate title, the World Championship. From Toronto on Lake Ontario to Corpus Christi in the Deep South, he and his crew have a lot to achieve in the months before September's World event.
The most difficult part of my job as a driver is letting the boat run free. A minimum wheel input as we race the boat. Every time I turn the steering wheel, it slows the boat down. So what I need to do is choose the proper course and the fastest course, and avoid having to make mid-course corrections or change our direction as much as possible. You need to let the boat run free, and it's difficult to do at times when these boats they do run pretty loose, and you need to allow them to, you need to maintain control but allow them to have their head. So it's a kind of a balancing act, as all things are in this sport, it seems. But that's a tough part for us to do. There's nothing I've ever experienced that is so much a team game. You really, it's extraordinary, the communication and the feel that has to go on between the throttle man and myself, and it's quite an experience to do this, because you really are sharing. You're communicating at a very gut level with the gentleman that's beside you. You're also are putting your lives in each other's hands. So it's a team game and a communications sport that is. In a lot of ways, it's kind of uplifting.
There's 5 boats. Any of them can win. You have Bobby Moore, who's always a threat. You have Joey, who's always a threat. You have Johnny Tomlinson, who's always a threat. So any of those guys can come up and beat us.
And battle commenced at Fort Myers off the Gulf Coast of Florida. Barber's early lead showed the sheer power of the boat. But Alcone's greater experience and 2 extra miles an hour allowed him to find a way through to the winning line. So, first blood to Alcone. But 2 weeks later, Barber was back with a vengeance. At Corpus Christi, Barber and his throttleman John Tomlinson announced their arrival as the competition to be feared. They battled it out at the front with WHM Motorsports through the churning seas of a tropical storm. For some competitors, including Alcone, these real offshore conditions proved too much to handle. For Barber, it was the early opportunity to show the rest of the pack that he meant business. The result after round 2 showed Barber in the position he could hardly have dreamt of, a commanding 30-point lead, and the World Championships still 5 months away.
Well, we have a lot of controls in the boat. My basic controls right away, I have obviously my throttles here where I control the speed of the boat, my shifters for my gearboxes for forward, neutral, and reverse. And then over here, for my left hand, I have basically my accessory switch panel to start the engines, run my fuel pumps, run my bilge pumps, my high pressure pumps, so I can reach everything while I'm strapped in the harness. Over here, my trim. I have all my trim systems over here where I can hold on here, I'm strapped in, I don't have to move, where I can run my drives, my indicators tell me where the drives are, my trim tabs for the back of the boat, the flaps, my indicators tell me where I can place those where those are, and then I have my wing flap that comes out the back of the tunnel that I can adjust and try and slow down or create lift with the boat by using the wing, and we're kind of experimenting with that right now to find an effectiveness with that on the boat. But as far as all my instrumentation goes, it's all real close together. We have a tight dash because we got a small compartment here, and I also have a ballast control system in this boat where I can literally pull this valve right here, and I can take water that's coming in the boat for the engines and feed a water tank up in the front of the boat. And I actually have gauges on my water tanks. I have 2 of them, and I actually have gauges to indicate the amount of water in the boat, so I can adjust the balance that way. And when the sea conditions are rough, you're paying attention so much on the water in front of you and setting the boat up really by the seat of your pants and feel. You will glance down just to get a baseline to see if everything's okay, but you won't really stay glued to everything as you will with a new set of engines or a test session where you're just really running the boat out and really trying to monitor everything. And the engine builders can also download the data from the engine and basically put on the computer screen everything that I'm seeing here, and they can let me know if I've missed anything or if something's not telling me here, what their data is telling them on the engines also.
Built from balsa wood and fiberglass, the boats handle enough energy to power a plane to 1,000 miles an hour. They travel as fast as a jet at takeoff, without taking off.
The first thing we try to achieve is a balanced boat, meaning we try to balance the boat for a variety of conditions, rough water and calm water conditions. Obviously, you can see by the hull form, we rely on 2 sponsons connected by what we call a tunnel between that provides lift to the hull. Now, we have to achieve a perfect balance between lift and drag. If we have too much lift, we can't keep the boat on the water, and if we don't have enough lift, we have too much sponson drag, and the boat doesn't go quickly enough. It's not a wing like a lot of people think this is a wing design. It's more a ground effects vehicle, meaning we're compressing air beneath the boat to give it the lift. Try to make the comparison with a monohull and a catamaran. If you've watched a monohull run in the water, you've noticed it appears to have very little wetted surface area, which is true. The difference is the monohull displaces a small area of water which it pushes through. A catamaran will actually have a bigger footprint on the water, but it's just touching the surface of the water. And that actually provides less drag to the catamaran than the monohull. In certain conditions, obviously, rougher conditions, more of the hull will be in contact with the water. And in certain very calm conditions, you'll find situations where the hull appears to be totally out of the water, and all you see is a light mist coming out of the back of the boat. These boats are going as fast as 747s on takeoff, but they don't take off.
The heart of the boat is a 2-man crew, driver and throttleman, the professional who maintains the boat. For 5 years, Jerry Gilbreth has been with Alcone. This is the first for John Tomlinson and Forrest Barber.
It takes some time. Teams that have really gelled, such as the Alcone Motorsports team, those are guys that have been together for going on 5 years now, and that's a big, big advantage.
It's natural to me now. I don't have to think about it. It's instinctive. I feel a part of the boat, and to a person that's never ridden in a boat like this, I would think it'd be quite thrilling.
Once we get a few races under our belt, though, then you just start getting more and more comfortable and more acclimated to each other, and then you know the boat. So I don't anticipate any problems. I just think it'll take a couple of races. But to come out with a brand new package just before the season starts, it's going to be tough. We're going to have a learning curve with the boat, I believe. But towards the end of the year, we should come together with it, and I expect to have a boat capable of winning races.
At Sarasota, Barber's meteoric rise continued. He set a new world speed record in the Class 1 kilo test runs of just over 154 miles an hour. However, race conditions present a tougher challenge. The difference between winning and losing is almost unmeasurable. Alcone opened a tiny gap of just 0.7 of 1 mile per hour, enough to take the lead in the race, but not enough to dislodge his new challenger at the top of the league. The roadshow moved north to Chesapeake Bay, chillier seas and a chillier reception for the Drambuie crew as they failed to match the best speeds of their Class 1 competitors. Although Forrest was now forcing the boat harder and harder, he could only finish in 3rd position, and his championship lead suddenly started to look fragile. The powerhouse in today's Class 1 powerboats is as dramatic and revolutionary as their hulls. 1,000 horsepower monsters have been created and paired together in the engine compartment to propel the boat to over 150 miles per hour. One builder, Sterling Performance, takes V8 engine blocks derived from commercial vehicle units. But what they produce bears no resemblance to the engine you would find under the bonnet of your car.
Cleanliness within the engine is probably one of the biggest, most important aspects of a motor's durability. If the motor isn't absolutely spotless when it's assembled, if you remove all of that out of the picture, you have everything absolutely, totally spotless, the motor will last a lot longer. The engine itself is dimensionally is somewhat similar to, let's say, an automotive engine in some respects, but in all reality, everything within the motor is completely different. An example would be this is the actual oil pump for the motor. In an automotive engine, the oil pump's inside of the engine, submersed in oil. In this particular engine, there's no oil in the motor. As fast as the oil falls into the oil pan, it's sucked out by this pump and pumped into a holding tank. In this particular application, it's worth about 35 or 40 horsepower. We have additional cooling for the springs. We spray oil on them. A normal automotive engine doesn't have anything like that. The job of an engine builder is to build the most amount of horsepower and the most amount of reliability within those rules. So basically, in our particular application, you have a race that's an hour and a half long. We build the engine to make the most amount of horsepower it can and last about an hour and a half. If we only had a half-hour race, well, we would probably build more horsepower into it and would last only a half an hour. You try to get the most for what the rules will allow you to do.
Serious air compressor and baby impact.
It costs £70,000 to replace each engine, and such is the commitment to winning and the obsessive attention to detail that race teams don't think twice about replacing both engines each time. Race wins, and drivers' lives depend on it. Dawn over West Palm Beach, Florida, and the search for the elusive extra mile an hour has Barber and Tomlinson up early. And when they return, there are smiles all round.
Forrest, it's been an early start for you this morning. Did you find what you were looking for?
I think we did. We had tested several different props and with a new gear ratio that we're running, and the boat seems to be working real well.
Without giving too much away, what did you find?
Well, we just found that the boat would accelerate and carry the speed that we think we need as well. So we were working on acceleration and top speed, and I think we have a good combination of both. It's strategic planning for every race, plus hoping to win every race. But, yeah, 3 points out of 400 and some odd is not a great advantage.
Mucho fast.
As the carefully chosen propellers are brought out and attached, the sense of tension amongst this good-natured crew grows by the minute.
As you can tell, I'm quite nervous. There's a lot of things, you know, a lot of things on the line right now.
West Palm Beach proves to be a tough fight between the by now battle-hardened titans who dominate this Class 1 powerboat championship. The edge one holds over the other is minute, and it changes each lap. There had been much hype and backchat throughout the championship so far, and this was as good a place as any to sort out who was the worthy championship leader. They were now at over 160 miles an hour down the straights. And it was Alcone who led for the first time in the championship since round one.
You know, I'm sure that nobody's going to, give up, and nobody's going to give us the title today. So they're going to push real hard, and that's great. And it's going to be real competitive from here on out. I don't think the story's over yet.
In the first 5 rounds of the National Series, average speeds have risen from 120 to 140 miles an hour. At times, the boats appear to fly. But the higher out of the water they fly, the more unstable they become. With millions of pounds and many human lives at stake, the safety arrangements and scrutineering are close to that of a fighter plane, and much of the technology is the same.
If we do have a situation where we went upside down or underwater, it wouldn't be where I had to look for the regulator and put it in my mouth. This full-time air system would take over. This system is an on-demand. You have to pull air to get a demand, but when it does go upside down, the water pressure around this hose will cause this regulator to go in a free-flow mode to give you positive air pressure so that you don't have to worry about the mass leaking water or anything like that. And therefore, if we were knocked out or something like that, we should be on full-time air and not be in a situation where we drowned.
At each race, a small armada of rescue boats stands by, with a full crew of medics and divers on board.
We also have our rescue divers, that 2 guys that fly in the helicopter above us, that is their job in a rescue situation to get us out.
So you're pretty safe?
We think so. As safe as we can be, yeah. Easier said than done.
In any race, there is a 7% chance of a serious accident like this. It is the job of the safety network to get to the boat within seconds. Minutes may be too late. But the drivers and throttlemen have to fight for their lives and are trained to do so in these dunk tests. Brace is the key word they must remember. B stands for brace for the accident. R is reach for escape point. A, access air. C, count to 10. And E is escape. No one is allowed to race until they show they can successfully fight the natural tendency to panic when trapped. The most noticeable sight above the powerboats is a swarm of helicopters, often up to 16 in the air at once, each following its own boat. They're all controlled from a rescue boat by the safety officer who, with a dedicated radio channel, acts as a floating air traffic control center. Round 7 of the American National Series at St. Petersburg. No, not the winter home of the Tsars, but the unusually named Florida resort for the Hurricane Offshore Classic. Could there be a revolution in the supremacy stakes of Class 1 powerboating? Barber and Tomlinson had burned much midnight oil in the quest for more speed and handling. But Alcone's blistering 140 mile per hour average put paid to the comrades' dreams. The boats are equal in so many ways. The hulls, the engines are the same, but the difference may lie in propeller technology.
There's so many different variations that you can do to propeller. Some hold the nose down, some will raise the nose up, some will pick the tail of the boat up, some will let the tail drop. And basically, it's up to two guys, the guys in the cockpit, which give us feedback, and we tell our propeller designer what the boat's doing and what we'd like it to do. And there's different ways you can shape the blade area. You could take diameter out, put diameter in, and there's a lot. It's basically a whole different science in itself. If you overprop a boat, it can make for a miserable day. Because what happens is a throttle man has to try to overcome too big of a propeller, and it almost becomes dangerous at sometimes. Because if you can't get a propeller up to the RPM band, you have to over trim the drives, and that lets the boat kite and get away from you a little bit. But when you put the right propeller on and you can control the boat with the trim properly, she'll go over the top of the waves flying level, and it'll just look like it's shot out of a cannon.
Throughout the season, there's been controversy over the propellers Alcone uses. The rules state they must be freely available to all competitors.
There really aren't that many mysteries. We're running a profile of a lower prop that Mercury ran in Biloxi last year that everybody knows. And on our props, you know, we have a good selection of props, but the other team does too. You know, in this sport, you always have to find some reason why you're not winning, and that's the one that they have to focus on this year. I've just gotten to the point where I'm a little sick of all the letter writing going on between races and all the politicking and all the trying to change rules to suit their means. So I think the message would be, you know, the green flag's going to drop at the beginning of this race, and the checkered flag's going to be waved at the end. And what really happens and what really matters is what happens between those two events, not midweek and letter writing sessions in your den.
Round 7, and the crews reach Toronto, Ontario Bay. But with 12 hours to race start, Barber and Tomlinson have a major problem.
Basically, George, our glass guy, has been working all night trying to repair the 12 by 12 section that we had to repair all night. And we were successful, and we're back almost ready to race right now.
There is no time for final practice. And then, as they make their way to the start line, they suffer another setback. Quite unbelievably, they discover a flat battery, which must be replaced.
Did you call?
4 minutes to race start.
Clear! Fire them up! See what we got! 72 or 78, Dave? 78, Dave. Channel.
Gotta keep us on our toes, man.
They just made it, but had sacrificed any hope of a good start position. It was ironic that the most crucial round in the American Powerboat National Series took place out of the United States, in Canada. And now, Alcone was on the inside track, in pole position in the championship, and he intended it to stay that way. As hard as Barber tried, the 200-metre gap between himself and Alcone never got any smaller.
Mathematically, it's not finished. I mean, we really needed that race. Actually, we needed that race and the coming one to win the national championship. You know, there's still a chance. Anything can happen, I think. I mean, we overcame a lot of obstacles to get to the start line today. We had a problem with the bottom of the boat, and then last-minute electrical and battery problems that we were able to get out there and run a real strong race. So I'm proud of what we did today. We're going to continue to run and try and win every race we're in.
At every race, there are enthusiasts and supporters of every type. Dave Norton started racing probably before Forrest Barber was born. His van has more than 500,000 miles on the clock, and his powerboat is more than 50 years old, and he still races it. No ordinary boat, no ordinary man, and no space-age technology.
I'm looking for the adapter for this, but okay, wait a minute, it's inside. All is saved. I can remember seeing boats race when I was just a kid, never in the world ever thinking that I was going to be able to go boat racing. You know, it was a dream then, you know. So. But I saw this boat race here at the exhibition here in Toronto before I got it, and again, never thinking of getting it, and managed to get it a couple of years after that. You know.
Racing
I tried car racing. I did hill climbs with cars, motorcycle racing on a flat track, like a, you know, not a dirt track, an airport course. And then a chap loaned me, or let me take his hydroplane out. And the feel of that hydroplane going back and forth was, I had me hooked right then and there. And that was nearly 50 years ago, and I'm still racing. So.
Didn't it ever occur to you it was dangerous?
Actually, in those days, the idea, in case of an accident, is get away from the boat. Push yourself away, somehow get away from the boat, because most of the injuries were the boat coming down on you, see. And I must say that when they went to the capsules that you now have, and you're strapped in, I've not been very happy since then, because of all, you know, you can't see, you've got to use mirrors, and if you can picture the water going, you can't see anything in the mirror at all, where you could crank around and look behind in these days, you know what I mean? But it's safer. It's like seat belts. I'm sure seat belts kill some people by trapping the people in the car if it's burning or something. But the odds are that you're better, and I'm sure the odds are better if you're in a capsule. If the water gets really rough, you know it, because you take quite a pounding. Particularly when you weren't strapped in, you're bouncing up and down. The idea after this one was to get a seat that holds you so tight that you couldn't bounce off, because if you can control your throttle foot, and you're not coming up it off the time, it's a big advantage, you see. And but we got one time so tight that you could feel your innards, all your interior organs going up and down in a rough day. So there are limits to doing it. But nowadays you're strapped in, kind of semi-reclining in the boat, you know, to get you down. I'm not fully used to that yet, thank you.
If you don't mind me asking you, how old are you?
71.
And still going strong?
Still going strong, it says here. This has kept me young, you know what I mean? Really has. The big thing about boat racing is the camaraderie between you and the other drivers. There's no money in it to speak of, not in the classes I run in. But because of that, nobody's going to drive over top of you for the pittance in prize money that you get.
So you wouldn't have changed anything if you had all that time again? Would it still be with boats?
Still be with boats, yeah.
South Padre Island, the final round. But while Matt had called the shots for most of the season, it was George who had the final say.
Overnight, the storm surge from Hurricane George has come in here, and at 7 o'clock this morning, the waves were 4 to 6 feet on the beach. Right now, they're 8 to 10, and there's some even higher than that. So it's in the interest of safety that we must cancel the race.
That put Barber and Tomlinson second, a remarkable achievement in their first year of Class 1 racing.
No, it's not over yet. We have the Worlds to win in Biloxi, so we're going to keep working hard. We want to beat them. We want to beat the Alcone boat when we have an opportunity, and I expect they'll be there and they'll race hard.
From here on out, I think what we want to do is go in and put in a good, consistent performance in the World Championships and see, you know, what we can do in Biloxi, and hopefully we can make the boat run that well. And then at the end of the World Championships, look and see what these guys are going to try to do to catch us next year.
As Matt Alcone celebrated, he knew only Forrest Barber had come anywhere near him. He now had every reason to believe that in Biloxi, Mississippi, the World Championship title would be his, for the taking. Biloxi, the gaming capital of the Gulf Coast. High stakes, high rollers, and the biggest throw of the dice for Barber and his World Championship bid. It's the night before the race, and the only activity in the Coliseum car park pit area is around his boat. But next morning, the shrimp boats find alien craft and unusual behavior on shore.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's light?
It's very intense. Sometimes it's very frightening, but it's always after the event is over or during it, you take a lot of pride in the good things that you've done and look at what you could do better.
Gentlemen, start your engine.
The first race in the World Championships began with a dream start for Barbara and Tomlinson. They knew exactly what to do. They made sure they took the inside precious line to Mark 1, and that would leave the others fighting to keep up. And they went on to record a convincing win and set the standards for the final race.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thanks very much. You guys were right there. I mean, right on
Hey,
it.
Jimmy. Nice run.
Thank you very much.
But firstly, congratulations.
Thank you.
John Forrest. How does it feel to break Matt Holcomb like that in big style?
Well, I don't take any kind of delight in any other's misfortune, but it's a pretty satisfying win in that we have run second to them all season, except for when they had a mechanical problem. And this is a fair and square. We went out there and beat them, and it feels very good.
Because the job's only half done, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. You want to celebrate, but we got to do it again Saturday, and it's going to be, it wasn't easy today, but it's not going to be any easier Saturday. I can guarantee that. It's going to be tough.
So, a commanding 7-point lead after the first race. But once again, controversy surrounded Alcone. He faced a crippling penalty from the race jury for allegedly cutting up WHM Motorsports during the race. And driver Billy Moff's anger spilled over to a post-mortem.
You want to see the number of times that people drifted out, that Carl drifted out something? It happens.
I understand that, but you know what, Matt? Let me explain. When I got off the boat and I said to you it was a good race, it was a good race. It was the best race that we've had because, it's the first time this year I've been able to stay in front of you.
And you did a great job.
But understand something. What happened out there, Matt, you could have avoided that by
Did you hold your lane? In that tape?
Well,
the decision goes against us, it goes against us. Then I think we lose. I think Drambuie loses because they don't get a chance to win this on the water where they've worked so hard to try to do it. I think the fans lose. So a bunch of people lose. Nobody wins.
But whichever way it goes, you'll still be racing.
Well, I won't be racing on Saturday. I mean, it'd be a waste of time and money to put a boat in the water when you're 10 minutes behind. But, just do what you've got to do.
An hour later, the jury reached their decision.
We're back to racing. Today's just part of the battle, as Drambuie showed us on Wednesday. They have lots of speed, so now we can turn it up a little and see what we've got and have a good race.
But back in the pits, there was little time to talk politics. Barbara's crew chief, Mike Thomas, had discovered a much bigger problem.
Mike, it's 4 hours to race time. You've got a problem. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, going over the boat this morning, we've noticed that one of our new headers has got a crack developed in it. So we're going to go ahead and peel back some wrapping and get a welder and weld it back up. Now that we got it opened up, I don't like what I see. But if we can get a good weld on it, I'll throw the dice. What can you do? This is a bonsai run. We're going for it all.
A cracked exhaust leaks heat at a fatal 1,300 degrees Celsius.
It's a hiccup. I'm just glad that our guys discovered the problem as soon as they did so we can get it repaired and get back in the hunt.
But after 2 hours, a suitable welder still hadn't been located. Things were looking much brighter, though, for Alcone. Morning practice had passed without hiccups, and he had time to relax and reflect on the unpredictable excitement of powerboat racing at world-class level.
Given the fact that at any moment anything can happen, somebody can break an engine, that's motorsports, or God forbid you could have an accident, I'm sure it won't be decided till the last turn of the last race, and I think that's good for the sport, and that's good for the fans, and that's good for the drivers. It keeps it fun and exciting.
Then, with just 70 minutes to race start, the smile returned to Forrest's face.
Hey, everybody can breathe now. Come here, 20 minutes.
The newly welded exhaust was finished and fitted just in time. But would it withstand the extraordinary pressure of an hour's racing? The crew made use of every second before the race. Right on time, Drambuie on Ice made it to the start of the final heat of the World Championship. It really was, as Mike Thomas described it, a banzai run, everything to play for and everything to win. Once again, Forrest Barber beats the pack to the inside track, heading for the crucial position into the first turn. Or had he? Alcone, out for the kill with nothing to lose, takes the biggest gamble of his racing career. And Barber's crew, watching from the shore, see him speeding up from the back of the fleet to take the start flag flat out. Halfway to the first mark, he forces Barber and Tomlinson to give him room on the inside. Now, if he can make the first turn, he'll achieve a potentially unbeatable lead. But what happened next, no one could have forecast.
Got a boat upside down, JT, coming out of this corner.
A cooler head and a steadier hand had paid off for Barber and Tomlinson. Alcone could only watch as his race for the World Championship was over. But the worry now for Barber's crew was, would the repaired exhaust hold out?
Drambuie is taking the lead.
Oh yeah. We got a large lead.
First place in modified.
Bring it home, baby. Bring it home for us.
Brian Connor, fourth place in modified.
It did, and unbelievably, in their first season, Forrest Barber and John Tomlinson lifted the world title. They did it on merit, by applying the pressure when it mattered. And Matt Alcone was left to ponder on his bronze.
I think, although we certainly had to work hard to make it happen, we had a mechanical hiccup at the very last second that, I mean, I thought we were at risk for making this start, but the team got together and made it happen. So a perfect week, a perfect day, you know, and an extraordinary team.
Looking in the mirror on the left, and all of a sudden Alcone comes sneaking up the rear, and he had a plan to get my inside, and he knew that's where he had to be, and they dropped the green when he was getting a run on us, and we all took off, and there was nothing we can do. He had the inside, and he had the perfect line into that turn, and I expected to see him at the apex of the turn, but when I looked to the inside, I didn't see him. I just saw just a huge spray of white water, and I knew exactly what happened. You know, luckily, thank God, they were all right, and it was a good, safe race for everybody. It's a shame it happened that way, but glad to see everybody's okay.
It's hard to express really what I feel, but except it's been an extraordinary season, and I am so proud and lucky to be associated with Johnny and the team. It's really remarkable the way it came around. But I think we all worked awfully hard to make it happen, and the Drambuie on Ice team's now world champions.
Now we come to the big one. The 1998 Offshore World Championship team. Drambuie on Ice.
Boy, wow, what a season and what a week we've had.